Ladies and gentlemen, coming by Skype is Josh Fox. Hi, Mr. Fox. Josh Fox is the founder and artistic director of International WOW Company. The film and theater company works closely with actors and non-actors from diverse cultural backgrounds, including members of the U.S. military, activist communities in sustainable energy and design, and actors, dancers, designers, and filmmakers from around the world to create works that address current social and political crises. Founded in 1996, International WOW has premiered new work in 8 countries with a rotating network of over 100 actors and creative artists spanning 30 countries on 5 continents. Sounds very interesting. Mr. Fox, you're on.
Yes, but I think what I'm known for is creating the documentaries Gasland and Gasland Part 2. I got a lot to say, so I'm going to talk very fast. First of all, thank you so much to the Democratic National Convention Platform Committee for the opportunity and the honor to testify before you on the important need for the party to adopt a ban on fracking in its national platform. My name is Josh Fox. In 2008, my family was offered a gas lease to frack our 19.5 acres in the Upper Delaware River Basin in Pennsylvania, which is near the border of New York, and is part of the watershed for 16 million people downriver in New York City, Philadelphia, and southern New Jersey. The industry's offer, which we ended up not taking, sent me on an 8-year investigation into the truth about fracking. My investigative work on fracking became 2 feature-length documentaries that premiered on HBO and were seen in 32 countries worldwide to an approximate audience of 50 million people, Gasland and Gasland Part 2. Gasland was nominated for the Oscar for Best Documentary, and the 2 projects combined for a total of 5 Emmy nominations, including 1 win for Best Directing and countless other environmental, film, and journalism awards. My investigation brought me to hundreds of locations across 25 states, interviewing hundreds of citizens, scientists, and elected officials. What I found was simply horrific. An industry with no regard for public health and safety, and a deeply flawed, unfixable, and unregulatable process that is inherently contaminating and dangerous. Fracking causes rampant water contamination, air pollution, land scarring, and soil contamination, and most importantly, a public health crisis among citizens exposed to toxic air and water, with effects ranging from brain damage to cancer to birth defects. Fracking chemicals and volatile organic compounds released in the process have the potential to damage every human system. Fracking is a carcinogen-dependent process, and the industry has been found to use over 900 toxic chemicals, which are injected directly into the earth in huge quantities, creating trillions of gallons of toxic waste that has been shown to contaminate underground sources of drinking water and surface water. Currently, 17 million Americans live within 1 mile of a fracking well. This means that they are in danger of water contamination, air pollution, and adverse health effects. And that has spurred a huge movement against fracking all across the country. When I started in 2008, there was virtually no science on fracking. Now there are over 700 peer-reviewed studies on fracking, proving conclusively all of the harms reported by citizens, from water contamination to air pollution to health problems to earthquakes to worsening climate change. But here's the real crux of what I need to tell you. Since Gasland premiered on HBO in 2010, I have toured to over 350 cities nationwide, screening the film in communities that are fighting fracking and on the front lines. What I have seen is one of the largest and fastest growing social movements on the planet, and it is a force to be reckoned with. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the movement against fracking. It is an incredible gathering of Americans from all walks of life, from rural populations of farmers trying to protect their groundwater, to residents of New York City and Los Angeles concerned with earthquakes and climate change, to folks from Texas and Colorado fighting for clean air and water. The movement to ban fracking is mighty, popular, enthusiastic, dedicated, armed with science and the facts, and motivated by protecting our children from harm. And we vote. We voted for candidates in referendums to ban fracking in municipalities and statewide elections in states like Vermont, California, New York, Colorado, and Maryland. And in fact, many major fracking states are swing states with horrific pollution from fracking and significant percentages of the population where the Democratic Party needs the votes of those people who will be motivated to go out and vote based solely on the fracking issue. Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, New Mexico, New Jersey, Virginia, Ohio, Florida, Colorado, all have very significant numbers of people who are anti-fracking voters in these key swing states, and we need them to assure victory in November. People like myself will work tirelessly to elect Democrats up and down the ballot if they are indeed anti-fracking Democrats, if it means we can end the horrific destruction caused by fracking. In March, a Gallup poll revealed that the majority of Americans oppose fracking. The poll shows that 75% of Democrats oppose fracking, and that even Republicans had the biggest drop in support of fracking in the last year. So it's a unity issue that crosses political boundaries. On June 8th, a diverse coalition of climate and environmental justice groups delivered over 90,000 petitions to the DNC demanding that a ban on fracking be included in the party platform, and a massive anti-fracking protest is being planned for Philadelphia on July 24th, the day before the DNC begins. It's called the March for a Clean Energy Revolution. It's expected to draw thousands, and it's demanding a ban on fracking, and its demands have been endorsed by over 400 organizations. Additionally, fracking is the primary emerging battleground in the fight against climate change. What is most disturbing to me is the language used by the Democratic Party that has been taken directly from the natural gas industry, that of the fracked gas bridge fuel. A bridge fuel policy means we're going to switch a huge section of our electricity generation sector to fracked natural gas. That means building 300 fracked gas power plants around America. That means hundreds of thousands of miles of pipelines and probably 2 million new fracking wells. And those power plants are financed, like most people's houses, for 30 to 40 years. That's a regime change in American energy to fracking. That would be an utter disaster for the climate and would surely push us beyond the stated goals of the Democratic Party. Methane is at least 86 times more powerful as a heat-trapping gas than carbon dioxide in the short term, which is why real peer-reviewed research shows that shale gas is worse for the climate even than coal. So if we push 300 new shale gas power plants, gas pipelines, and other fracking infrastructure, which citizens, by the way, right now are fighting across the country, it will be catastrophic for the climate and for the Democratic Party. Fracked gas is not a bridge. It is a gangplank to a global warming calamity. Pursuing a new energy regime of fracked gas power plants is in direct contradiction to the Democratic Party and the Obama administration's stated goals on climate change as articulated by the Paris Agreement at COP21. For the United States to have signed those climate accords in Paris, it means that we have committed on an international stage to dramatically reduce emissions and move towards renewable energy vigorously. The only way we do that is to stop fracking and to phase out natural gas immediately. And because 90% of all the gas wells in the United States are fracked, that means moving away from all natural gas swiftly and decisively and towards 100% renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Fox? Yes, Ms. Booth.
I hope you can hear me. So walk me through what happens if we do discontinue hydraulic fracturing or fracking. If it's the case that this currently produces more than half of our current natural gas and half of our current oil, are we then depending on the free market to then make these adjustments? You'll be answering a question that comes from someone who's very suspicious of how the free market provides benefits to all of us. But, will the petroleum industry fill the demand that obviously currently exists through means that are equivalently or perhaps even more dangerous to our goals of in the area of climate change? What's the glide path here?
Well, we're in the process of regulating out coal, right? And we're doing that because we have very low ceilings for carbon dioxide emissions from coal-fired power plants. We have to adopt a ceiling that natural gas-fired power plants can't survive. First of all, the fossil fuel industry right now is actually expanding. It's not being phased out. So we have to phase out the use of fossil fuels, and we have to keep these fuels in the ground. One of the ways that we do this, obviously, is by banning fracking. But what's happening in America right now is an enormous grassroots movement that is motivated for political change. If we pursue an agenda where we incentivize the creation of renewable energy and do that in concert with what I believe is this incredible grassroots force, some might call it a political revolution, on the ground, and we give people the incentive to go out and educate their neighbors and create incentives for renewable energy, I believe that we can both phase out coal and natural gas on our way to 100% renewable energy.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Gomez.
Yeah, thank you very much, Josh, for your testimony. It was very powerful, very moving, and I think we do need to pay attention to it. You were talking in your testimony about hundreds of peer-reviewed studies that have documented the harms of fracking. I just wanted to add one more. One of the major reasons why New York banned fracking is because of its report from the Department of Environmental Conservation there that no amount of regulation, none, can safely guard against the dangers fracking poses to our land, water, air, natural resources, and public health. And so I just, the question that I wanted to ask you is, do you believe that fracking can be regulated? Can we put more regulations on fracking to make it safer, or is that just an impossible task?
That's an impossible task, and that's according to the industry's own science on fracking. The natural gas industry and the oil industry knows very well that their oil and gas wells leak. So from the standpoint of water contamination, there is no way to ensure with any degree of reliability that you're going to preserve underground sources of drinking water. There's just simply no way to do that according to the industry's own science, and I'd be happy to give the panel documents about that show industry's own studies that show that 8% of all oil and gas wells leak initially upon drilling, and that over a 30-year period, 60% of them begin to leak. And that is because the well casings themselves, the drill pipe is surrounded by cement, an inch of cement. Cement cracks and breaks, it's brittle over time. Nothing can withstand the pressures and the temperature changes down there, and it's simply not an adequate way of creating a seal around those gas wells. So for the position of water contamination, absolutely not. It is not possible to regulate. The other problem here, I think, with respect to the climate, is that so much of the natural gas infrastructure in America is leaking right now. You have cities leaking at huge percentage rates. You have 2% leakage in New York City, 5% leakage in Washington, D.C., 4% in Boston. The frack gas process itself leaks a lot of methane, so you have leakage in the drilling phase, the delivery phase, and in the downstream phase where it's actually given to in the pipelines and then in the delivery phase. That adds up to huge numbers. So I think the estimate was $22 billion to replace every natural gas pipeline in New York City. That's half the price of a smart grid for the entire United States. And then we would be repairing a system that we need to phase out anyway from the standpoint of climate, right? So if you're going to push natural gas from the standpoint of climate, from the standpoint of water contamination, these two things are unsolvable problems. In addition, you're creating trillions of gallons of toxic waste. Nobody knows what to do with it. We're injecting it back into the ground. The EPA has said that is an extraordinarily bad idea, that America has the potential of sitting on top of a pool of toxic waste that will eventually migrate into our water supply. There's simply no way to make this process work. And as we know from studying climate science, we are already at 1 degree of warming for the planet. We have enough carbon dioxide and methane and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere now to bring us to 1.5 degrees, even if we shut off everything right now. And if our stated goals in Paris are well below 2 degrees, that means we have to move towards renewable energy as vigorously and as quickly as possible. We need an FDR-like mobilization on renewable energy. That's what real leadership on the climate would be, and absolutely number one on that list is to stop fracking and to stop expanding the fossil fuel.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to Ms. Browner and to the panel. We've got some panelists who have to catch planes, so we're going to try to be as brief as we can.
Josh, thank you very much for your very thoughtful testimony. You mentioned as you were closing your testimony that we should transition away from natural gas, and we've seen other countries make very important steps in terms of reducing carbon, but in making those steps, do them in a time frame that actually resulted in an increase in carbon emissions, which is not anything any of us want. We want a decrease in carbon emissions. So I would be interested if you can speak a little bit to what you think is a responsible transition. And secondly, I assume as part of a transition, you would support reinstating the Environmental Protection Agency's authorities, which were stripped in what's commonly referred to as the Halliburton-Cheney loophole.
The Halliburton loophole is what the exemption to the Safe Drinking Water Act for fracking specifically, which means that fracking companies are allowed to inject toxic chemicals into the ground and not report them to the EPA and not have to permit that process, which is a fairly outrageous proposition. Yes, absolutely, that exemption has to be overturned. Absolutely, that exemption has to be overturned right away. But here's what I would say. We are not actually phasing out fossil fuels with the clean power plant. What we're doing is we're trading one fossil fuel for another one. We're trading coal for gas. And that is very clear in the way that the clean power plant is created. What we have to do is not replace all the old coal plants with new fracked gas plants, which will last for 40 years. We simply have to replace the coal, we have to retire the coal plants and retire the natural gas plants and replace them with renewable energy. I've been across the country in the last 3 months. I've toured my new film to 66 different cities. I can't tell you how many communities, dozens of communities, are fighting mega fracked gas plants, which will create toxic pollution in their neighborhoods, and they're fighting them tooth and nail. They're fighting the pipelines, they're fighting the power plants, they're fighting the fracking wells, they're fighting the compressor stations. That is a huge fight that the Democratic Party doesn't want to be on the wrong side of. So when it comes to what's actually happening on the ground in America right now, people are outraged by the idea that we're going out of the frying pan into the fire. So we have to create a clean power plan that phases out both gas and coal and moves us vigorously towards renewable energy. But it's already happening. We just have to take out that piece that transitions the coal to the gas and move it from coal to renewable energy. That's the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.